George spent 2 weeks in Venezuela in the run-up to Chavez's last re-election. And like Ken, he's defended Chavez and Maduro against the attacks that are continually being made in the mainstream media. So, well done, George, and nice to see you. Look forward to your contribution.
Thank you very much, Chair. Your Excellencies, comrades and friends, my apologies, first of all, for my lateness. I took the 7:30 a.m. train to Manchester and immediately, more or less, came back, and therefore I'm late, and I'm sorry about that, particularly to the other speakers, to whose contributions, of course, I'll not be able to refer, and I now risk repeating what other people have said. I came in to your session at a rather exciting point when tomorrow's Daily Mail or Mail on Sunday headlines were being written, that in the Unite headquarters this afternoon, people were talking about guns and breaking them out and revolution as opposed to democracy and so on. It took me back to October 1973, when I was the sole, only non-Trotskyist member of the National Executive of the Labour Party Young Socialists. And the Trotskyist majority had tabled a motion denouncing the class collaborationism of Salvador Allende, whose body was not even yet cold. I tabled my negating amendment and failed to find a seconder, and therefore recorded my dissent, which still exists in print in the minutes of that meeting. I say in parenthesis, no disrespect to our exciting speaker, that within 10 years, not a single member of the 24-member majority was still even in the Labour Party, even in socialist politics, let alone advocating the arming of the workers and denouncing Allende for his reformism. The question is not the false dichotomy between our attitude to democracy and our attitude to revolution, but the real dichotomy between the ruling class's attitude to democracy. It's they who don't believe in democracy, not us. It's we who stand for democracy, and revolution is about bringing about democracy. It's the ruling class that use democracy as a kind of lipstick on a pig, which they are ready to rub off whenever the pig's interests are materially threatened. And that can take many forms. It can take the form of coup d'etat and murder, as it did in September of 1973 in Chile. It can even take the form of actual genocide in my wife's country of Indonesia, where the popular government is overthrown and then millions are murdered by the side of the road. It can take the form of incarceration, as it has now in the case of the Workers' Party of Brazil and its heroic leader, Lula. It can take the form of criminalization, as it is currently doing in Argentina. It can take the form of saying that black is white and night is day, as it has done for now decades in the case of Venezuela. Some of you may have seen, I think, a rather splendid altercation between myself and Channel 4 News on the death of Hugo Chavez, when Chavez is described by Channel 4 News as a dictator. the most elected dictator in the entire history of democracy in the world. It didn't matter how many elections, plebiscites, referenda, constitutional vindications that Chavez succeeded in winning. He was still a dictator for those who hate democracy. And like yourself, I was there in Chavez's last victory, and then came back and spoke at the Oxford Union. Again, quite a well-watched video, millions of views. I went to the Oxford Union to be told by these very clever young people that the election I had just been observing never really happened. The victory I was extolling never actually happened. I was told by these clever young people at Oxford that the opposition in that election had been kept off television, when I had just with my own eyes spent 2 weeks watching a whole plethora of opposition television stations on which the opposition leader Capriles was on from morning until night. I was told by these very clever people that the opposition was somehow crushed in the final election of Hugo Chavez, even though from my hotel room window I saw them muster in their thousands for demonstration after demonstration after demonstration against Chavez. So there are people who will never accept real democracy, real transformative democracy. But those people are not us. We are the people that believe in democracy, and we should never allow ourselves, particularly as there is probably a man from the Daily Mail here, sound as if we pose revolution as divorced from democracy, when of course the precise opposite is true. Chavez's final election was one of the most heroic fortnights I ever in my life had the opportunity to witness. Chavez was like a magnificent bull in a bull ring, chasing the taunting matadors out of the ring to the cheers of the masses. And masses is the important point. For those of us who were there, to see on election day thousands upon thousands of the poorest Venezuelans, the blackest Venezuelans, the most disabled Venezuelans, the downtrodden for decades of their lives before this revolution, pouring out democracy in action, was to see some kind of miracle. As it happens, I'm a religious believer, but even if you are not, it was some kind of miracle. And you can actually, I did see the poorest, the most downtrodden Venezuelans went to the polling booths with the greatest excitement. And the ugliest, the richest, those with the most gold teeth in their mouths, faces falling as the results came in. It was the perfect democracy. It was the triumph of the people who, without the right to vote and without the right person to vote for, the right movement, the right ideas to vote for, would have been quite powerless. to see them seize the power that the vote gave them and elect that right person, that right movement with those right ideas, was for me truly divine. And they sang. Forgive me, I can't sing. Corazón, Chavez, Corazón del Pueblo, the heart of the people. To see poor people singing that, to hear them singing it, would bring a tear to a glass eye, as we say in Glasgow. The reason they hated Chavez was not because he was a dictator, but because he was empowering those without power. Because he was putting in the hands of those without power the means of transforming their lives. And that was the Venezuelan path, chosen by the Venezuelan people in the concrete, you talk about Marx, comrade, in the concrete realities of their own lives, their own circumstances. Of course, me personally, I prefer the Cuban way. But if the Cubans had decided a different way, I wouldn't have the gall to come to a meeting in comfortable London and say, you know, you really should be doing this differently. That's not what solidarity is. Solidarity is support for the people in their own circumstances, following their own line. Otherwise, it's a kind of Orientalism, you know. It's a kind of, well, maybe I'm being cruel. I better stop this line of argument. Opportunist, you can say. Don't get me started, because I've honestly only got into my stride. Solidarity is saying to our comrades, we support you. Whatever you decide to do to bring about your revolution, we support you. And we will never turn our backs on you. We may prefer in our hearts one tactic or another, one strategy or another, one attitude to this issue or that or another. But the world is divided between capitalist and imperialist power and those resisting it and seeking to change it. And we are on their side. That's what we have spent. I mean, as Her Excellency, the Nicaraguan ambassador, was talking about the great sacrifice. I was there. So were you, Tim. I was there. I saw the health workers and the teachers with their tongues hanging like neckties from their slit throats in the counter-revolution in Nicaragua. I was there. I was with the Sandinistas in the strategy they pursued at that time. I wouldn't dare or dream of telling them that the strategy they have now adopted is wrong and that they should turn back to the strategies of former days. I just conclude, given the time pressures, by saying this. Incarceration, criminalization, slander, smear, the Livingston treatment, the Corbyn treatment, the Scargill treatment, the Ben treatment. We are lucky. All we get are insults and smears and brickbats. And as Ken proved, they don't even actually work. Our tactic is to keep going. Our tactics are not to flinch. but to stand up tall. The methods in the hands of our detractors, our potential jailers, our potential usurpers, are wasting assets. Quite a lot of people will read the Mail on Sunday tomorrow, but more people will read the Twitter and Facebook feeds of everyone in this room. In my own case, 1.5 million. There you go, just one man. We can speak to people now, all over the world and all day. We are not dependent on Channel 4 News. We are not dependent on the BBC, still less any of the lesser sources of news. We are capable in this new age of rallying our forces, of educating each other, of explaining issues to each other in a way that we never were before. Chairman, when you and I started in this movement, in order to call a meeting, you had to type a stencil. Most of you don't even know what a stencil is. It's a skin. We had to type it, not with a computer, but with a hard typewriter, punching the letters in the skin. Then we had to wrap it round a drum, fill the drum with ink, turn it by hand, cut it in 4, go onto the street and hand the leaflets out to a bemused populace who wondered what kind of crazy people we were. Am I right?
More or less. I've heard about those stories.
I was going by your grey hair. Look how far we've come. How many of you are here because somebody handed you a 1/4-page stencil printed leaflet? We are a mass movement. We really, truly are a mass movement, and we're an international movement. We are more than capable of defeating our enemies. Jeremy Corbyn started the last general election 20% behind the Conservatives. They called the election because they believed that they were going to annihilate Corbyn and Labour as it has become transformed, and look what happened. And the reason they're so terrified of calling another one is because if he starts the next one neck and neck with the Conservatives, he'll win by 20 points. That's why they're terrified of us. The Venezuelans didn't come here to tell us how to bring about a British revolution. That's our job. And we can argue it amongst ourselves. Me, I'm with Chavez. I'm with Fidel. Both are dead, but they will never die. They will live forever. Venceremos. Thank you very much.
And there's me looking in the mirror this morning thinking I was looking younger. Okay, perfectly timed for 3:30. Now, Matt